There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. My name is James Carberry, and I'm joined today by Colton Leonard. He is the president of 2 Words, which is a company that is very near and dear to my heart. Colton, how are you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing so good, James. Thanks for having me on.
So Colton, I am really excited to chat with you today because I am super involved with 2 Words. I have known you guys a story from the beginning. But before we get into that, can you kind of explain, or before we get more into this particular episode, we're going to be talking about content-based networking. You guys have executed content-based networking on 2 different fronts that we're going to be talking about. But before we dive into those 2 things, tell us a little bit about what 2 Words is, who your buyers are, and then from there, I think our listeners will have enough context for us to plunge forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 Words, we primarily serve high school coaches and athletes. And real simply, we do 4 things. We travel around and speak and encourage our CEO and founder, Stephen Mackey. He speaks and encourages athletes and coaches across the great state of Texas and beyond, and many, many others where he's called to serve. And so speak and encourage athletes. We've got our podcast where we interview coaches from across the state and across the nation and kind of pick their brains on off the field stuff. We live in the character development world. And so we pick their brains on what they do outside of the X's and O's, if you will. We have our scholarships. And then the thing that we're most proud about is our character development curriculum. And so in partnering with the coach at the high school level, we seek to go when coaches want to go beyond the game. And coaches are called to wear so many hats these days. They're paid to be a teacher. They're there to coach. But what a lot of society has started to ask of them is to be parental figures. Those father and motherly figures in our athletes' lives. In doing so, we partner with those coaches to help provide resources for them to go beyond the game, like our character development curriculum, which is a video-based curriculum that has a video for every week of the school year with a corresponding workbook that coaches hit play. They pass out the workbook. It's a done for them solution, so that in the midst of their busy day, busy schedules, they're not having to seek out and do all the homework themselves to be that coach who can go beyond the game, if you will.
I love it. I have seen a lot of the curriculum. I've seen really Mackey's profile increase socially. I mean, if he gets anything less than 100 retweets these days, it's shocking. And so I've just sat back and been astonished at how quickly you guys have grown. You started at the beginning of 2017, so you're not even 2 years in, and you're already at a 7-figure run rate, which I think is just phenomenal considering the price point of your product. It's the curriculum that you guys sell is, they've priced it so that a high school athletic department can afford it. So it's not like you guys are out there selling these curriculums for $100,000 a pop. Like, it's relatively small deal sizes, but you guys have accumulated so much volume in the number of deals that you guys have closed that you're at a 7-figure run rate less than 2 years in. So I am super impressed with not just obviously the quality of the product itself and the lives that the product is changing, in the athletes and the parents of those athletes. Even you guys have a part of the curriculum that serves them and the way you guys are helping coaches. But in the actual business and how you guys are running the business is phenomenal to me. The two things I want to touch on there, both of which are two of the four things that you talked about, I think are phenomenal examples of content-based networking. The first one that you touched on was the scholarship. This particular tactic, I think it's such a beautiful extension of content-based networking because it's outside the box a bit. A lot of times when we talk about content-based networking, we're talking about podcasts, talking about blogs, we're talking about video series, like all of these types of content that's like, okay, I can easily see how you could collaborate with your ideal buyers to create that type of content. But this scholarship is super interesting because essentially what you guys have done is you've created a framework, this scholarship, that allows you to reach out to every single one of your ideal buyers across the entire state of Texas. So 1,400 athletic directors across the state that you guys are able to go to. And instead of saying, hey, athletic director, we want to sell you our curriculum, which I think is what most sales teams do, is instead are saying, hey, Mr. AD, we want to nominate two of your student athletes for a $1,000 scholarship that we're giving away. And I think it's brilliant. And you've actually got some numbers in terms of how many of those target accounts or in your context, how many of those you guys were actually able to engage with that type of messaging. But can you elaborate a bit more on what the scholarship is so listeners understand it a bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of our belief system, kind of our core beliefs as a business, is to add value to our customers first. And that's kind of to say we want to earn the right to ask for the sale. And the scholarship is a great way in which we do that. When we make the claim to athletes that, you can see success in life when you play the game the right way, when you play it through being of good character, that you can see success down the road. We want to put our money where our mouth is. And the scholarship really allows us to do that. So we collect nominations from 5 different Texas categories. They're ranked based on size. And we give out $1,000 scholarship to one male and one female athlete, student athlete, that is of good character, and that from each one of those categories. So last year we gave out $10,000 in scholarship funds. And a big part of our vision of that is to be able to serve those coaches and to be able to connect with them and continue to build relationships and trust with them. This past year, we reached out to every athletic director in the state of Texas from classifications 2A through 6A. That's over 1,460 contacts that we reached out to. And we sent them out a email campaign. We had over 1,100 of those individuals open our email. We had over 400 actually clicked and got into the link and into our site through that. And then we had over 200 programs nominate 330 athletes for our scholarship this past year. Mm-hmm.
That is incredible. So you guys were able to engage over 200 of your target accounts, these schools that would be a great fit for your curriculum, by not saying, hey, we want to sell you the curriculum, by instead saying, hey, we're giving away a scholarship to a male and a female student athlete in your classification, whether it be 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, but we need your help. We need you to nominate who the students at your school are so that we can put them in to the system that you guys have developed to determine who those two student athletes are. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's right. That's exactly the case. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. And then you guys have some sort of a tournament for all the students that get nominated. They go through some sort of like a March Madness style kind of tournament where their communities vote on them to advance to the next round.
That's correct. Yeah. And it's a very simple process that the athlete simply needs to collect votes. And then the athlete at the end of the day, one male, one female from each category, wins that has the most votes.
I love it. And you guys actually for every school that nominates students, they actually get or is it the winners, the schools at for the students that win, they actually get access to the curriculum for 6 months at no cost?
That's right. As part of the scholarship package, we want to be able to allow that athlete as they're transitioning into college to leave kind of that legacy of character with their program that they're stepping away from as they go on to college. And so part of that was to give them a sample portion, a 6-month portion of our character development curriculum. And this year, out of the 10 programs that had athletes that won the scholarship, 8 of those are participating in the sample program this semester. And we hope that in participating and getting involved and engaging in that program, one, no matter what, we get to engage their athletes. And that's just really, really great. Anytime we get to work with athletes and they get to jump into the curriculum, like that's a win in and of itself. So one, right out of the gate, we've got a W there. But two, we're also hoping that through that process of demoing and trying out the curriculum, and then us building that relationship with the coach and really getting to kind of plug in and build that trust with them, that they renew. And because we're a subscription-based company, right, they're not just renewing for the next semester, but our intention is for them to renew that next semester, and then the semester after that, and the semester after that, and continuing on in through that process and through that relationship.
I love it. I love it. I think that scholarship idea is such a unique take on content-based networking that I'm so glad that you elaborated there and shared that story, because I think there are a million different ways that you can collaborate with your target market to create content with them. And the scholarship, in this case, the scholarship is the content. You would not be able to give these scholarships away if you didn't have the athletic director to nominate those students. And so in essence, it's a different type of content, but it is still content. And I think the more and more folks that start to embrace content-based networking, hopefully will understand that it doesn't just have to be the traditional mediums like podcasting, blogging, video, but it can also be things like podcasts and other channels. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to shift focus a little bit, Colton, because when you joined the team at 2 Words pretty early on, you became the host of 2 Words podcast, Coach 360. And you guys have seen a ton of results from that show. I'd love to, you've got a couple stories of the journey of meeting someone by inviting them to be a guest on your show, and then that mapping to tangible business results. Can you share a couple of those stories with us?
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a great opportunity when I stepped into the role here at 2 Words to start to connect with coaches through the podcast. And podcasting is never something that I have personally done in my past or in my history. I had no experience with it, and so it took a little bit of time for me to get used to it. But I've really come to embrace it, and I've really started to enjoy it. And so at 2 Words, I kind of alluded to it earlier, we connect with coaches from across the state, and we pick their brains on the off the field stuff. We ask questions like, how do you develop your players off the field? Really so that our listeners that are tuning in get the opportunity to pick the brains of some of the greatest in the state and beyond in the nation, and then implement those ideas within their own programs, so that this culture of going beyond the game really gets to spread. And through that process, we've really had the opportunity, and this is what we love about the podcast, is to really go deep with some of these programs and some of these coaches, and to build those close relationships and to develop that trust. I can tell you on several different occasions, and as you and I both know, and often your listeners, I'm sure, when you start to really develop relationships and trust, dollars start to flow through the door shortly after. When you have that, when you can build it on a foundation of trust and relationships, dollars come naturally. For instance, we interviewed a coach in the San Antonio, Texas region, and had just amazing conversation with her. We hit it off right out of the gate, and that's really the fun part about podcasting, right? Is it's a little timid in the pre-interview. After you get through the interview, it's like your friends. It's a really fun experience, and you can call upon that friendship throughout throughout time. And so she said, "Hey, Colton, thank you so much for your time today, but I would love for you to reach out to this particular athletic director, because I think you guys would hit it off, and y'all are of the same mindset and of the same ethos, if you will." So reached out to that particular athletic director. Little did I know, he was the athletic director of the 4th largest district in the state of Texas, 12 high schools deep, over 14,000 student athletes they have within their district. And I reached out on behalf of her recommendation, and I referenced that recommendation as I reached out, and he accepted a meeting with us, and we sat down with him and just told him a little bit about who we were and what we were about, and offered to serve him in any way that we could, whether that be through the curriculum or speaking or whatever the case may be. That we just wanted to be a part of some of the great things that he has going on within his district. And lo and behold, we're going on our second year of the partnership with that district now, and they have become our top client, our top partner, if you will, and someone who has contributed heavily to the growth of our business from a financial standpoint. They've been our highest revenue generating partner. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got several other stories that are really similar to that. We had a coach that we interviewed, and we brought in, and I'm really intentional to not necessarily instantly offer the curriculum up or anything like that. Now, sometimes through the conversation of the podcast, it opens a door, just because all of a sudden we start identifying that both myself and the individual, the coach, like 2 words in the coach, are of the same mindset, being character first. And if it sounds like our curriculum can help them, then we'll offer it up. But also, it's not something that we'd never want it to feel like a bait and switch or anything like that.
Bait and switch.
And so
totally.
That's right. Because that's not the intent, and that's certainly not what we do. But connected with this coach, had a great conversation. And then I was actually passing through the area a few weeks later and shot the coach a text message and said, "Hey, coach, I'm passing through the area. I'd love to stop by and shake your hand and just thank you for your time and for coming on the podcast with me." And really the intent of that was just to see him face to face, shake his hand, and spend a few moments with him and kind of see and experience his program while in the area. After doing so, we had a great conversation, which led to a conversation about the curriculum and a little bit more about what 2 Words has done. And again, this relationship started from the podcast, has grown into a very valuable relationship to 2 Words and their program. They've brought in the curriculum across 2 high schools there, and we're going deeper with them on some of the speaking engagements that we have and some of our other leadership-based events for those student athletes that we'll host next summer. And so it's become a really amazing relationship, and really valuable from a revenue standpoint relationship that all originated from a podcast conversation talking about the things that we were like-minded on, and the things that we shared and that were in common.
I love that. So in both of those stories, you didn't know either of those people, the woman that referred you to, who's now your largest partner, and the gentleman that you, from that second story, you didn't know them prior to the podcast, but you reached out, asked them to be on the show, and then developed the relationship from there. Is that correct?
That's right.
Love it. And so what are some of the things you guys are doing to identify the guests that you want to feature on the show?
Yeah. A lot of our coaches, we look for the broad spectrum. Essentially, the qualifier is that they are a coach of some sport, that they are working in the same world that we are working in, and that they're adding value to some of those student athletes. And for the most part, that's nearly every coach in the state of Texas. And so we work really hard to get a broad spectrum view. Sometimes those are our athletic directors, because they've been in the game the longest, or at least they tend to have been in the game the longest. And sometimes those are championship coaches, and sometimes that's the basketball coach that is the new coach, because he's got an interesting perspective that some other people can learn from. And so really we're engaging with coaches from across the spectrum, and what's been an interesting turn of events that we didn't realize in the beginning was that we've actually started to build advocates and ambassadors through the podcast. Whereas, sometimes we may not be interviewing someone who is a decision maker when it comes down to a purchase or the curriculum, but we're interviewing somebody who works for the decision maker. You know what I mean? And so because we build that relationship and that trust, and, we hit it off because we're like-minded, then, next time the curriculum is in conversation within the district, well, we've got an advocate there. We've got an ambassador for 2 Words, because we've been able to connect and build the relationship through the podcast.
Totally. I think that's fantastic. I love seeing you guys execute this strategy so well. Colton, has there been anything, you being a newer host, you'd never hosted a podcast prior to Coach 360, anything that particular thing that you've learned throughout the process of being a host, other new hosts, you think could kind of glean from your experience?
Yeah. If you're timid about it, which if I'm being truthful, I was a little bit, because I thought I had to have all these great ideas, And then I thought I had to be able to articulate them so incredibly well for people to listen to it. And the truth of it is your listeners are likely not interview-based podcast, right? They're there to listen to the guest, not necessarily me. And so once I identified that, my role here is to ask the good questions and to, through my prep work, right, be prepared and then guide the conversation and then identify where I want it to land and pull that good information out, which, anyone can be a good interview if you prepare well enough in the beginning. And so when I identified that was the ticket to being able to produce the good content and to allow the coaches to speak, and that was a good pivotal turning point for me in my journey as a podcast host.
I love it. It's been fun for me to see the transformation of the timidness when you first started hosting to the comfort level that you have with it now. And a lot of it's just reps and sets, like doing it over and over. But I think you're spot on in that when you understand that your guest is the creator of the content, you're just getting them in that prep work. If you can cover with them the primary talking points that they want to cover, then all you have to do during the interview is set them up to knock their talking points out of the park. And so you've done an exceptional job with that. And so I'm glad that you shared that bit of advice, because I think that's something that a lot of folks struggle with early on. Colton, this has been incredibly helpful. I really appreciate your time today. If there's somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you or they want to learn more about 2 Words, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put my email out there. It's Colton, COLTON at the number 2words.tv. That's Colton at 2words.tv.
Love it. And then you can just check out 2words.tv, the number 2, and check out everything that they're doing. They're doing some incredible things, an incredibly fast growing business that is making an enormous impact. So if you want to check that out, make sure and go do that. They're also, you can also check out, is it at Mackie Speaks on Twitter where Mackie is most active?
Mackie Speaks on Twitter. That's right.
So the founder of 2 Words, the founder of 2 Words, you'll see a lot of the content that he puts out on Twitter. He's also pretty active on Instagram as well. So definitely make sure to stay connected with Colton and with Mackie, because they are doing some massive things. So again, Colton, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, James.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.